Sunday, October 7th, 2018, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So it's around 4:30 p.m. London time, so just before midday Eastern Daylight Time. I know it's earlier in the West Coast, and the majority of my viewers are from the US, and out of the US, the biggest viewership comes from California. I have been thinking of doing a live stream very early London time, like 6 a.m., which would be 10 p.m. The previous day in California. And I think I will do that. I'll have to get up earlier than usual to do that. So we got a few people coming on here. Andy, Dion, good morning, Andy. Hi, Chris. What a shambles. Hi, what a shambles. Lionel Witherspoon, he's in Philadelphia. Great. Marcia Teixeira Smith. Yeah, she's in Florida. And I could recognize that you know, by your name, that you had some relationship to Brazil. Teixeira is a very common name, surname in Brazil. Richard McCorkindale, a regular. Hi, Richard. S. Walker. Nice to see you here, S. Walker. So, yeah, this is going to be a casual live stream. As usual, I'll take questions and answer them. I'll talk a little bit about Brazil. They're having their general election today, 7th of October. Their system works that to be elected president today, the candidate needs more than 50%, and if they don't get it, they have to go for a second round. The top two presidential candidates go for a second round. I think it's the 27th or 28th of October. I'm not sure exactly. And why am I talking about Brazil? Well, I was born in Brazil in 1964. And I grew up there, so that's the and Brazil is a big country, not only geographically, but also in terms of the economy. I think it's like in the top 10 as far as GDP is concerned. GDP per capita is not that high. Brazil is very wealthy in terms of area, resources, but it has been badly managed, and there's a lot of inequality. But we'll talk also about the bond market, which I made a video about yesterday. I'll take your questions about it. I think we are in very interesting times for the financial markets, as U.S. Treasury yields seem to be spiking. They went from around 305 in the beginning of last week, and they ended at 323. So we have a few people coming on here. We've got Jeff from Pittsburgh. So we got someone in Philadelphia and one in Pittsburgh. Great. I've never been to Pennsylvania, but I've known people from Pennsylvania. So I had a good friend at university from Pittsburgh. Yeah, a few friends from Pittsburgh. And we've got James Reason, Ontario, Canada. Great. Malt Philistine from Idaho. Susan Chapo, she's a regular. Pablo is a regular as well. Thank you, Pablo. Oliver Bristol. Hi, Oliver. What else is going on? I mean, the title of the live stream is Bonds, Brazil, etc. And also, I wanted to talk about a couple of books that some of you probably have seen me talk about these, but I think they're really important. One of them is The Law by Frederick Bastiat, who was a French philosopher, economist. He died in 1850. And the other one is What Has Government Done to Our Money by Murray Rothbard, who was an Austrian school economist. I think he went to, he taught, or he went to Columbia School, University, and or he taught there, and he was like a colleague of one of the future Fed chairmen. I'm not sure which one, but really interesting books. I'll talk about them a little later. So let's see who's coming on here. And I've also wanted to talk about The Economist magazine. And I know it's a globalist, partly Rothschild-owned magazine, but there's a note saying that you need to keep your friends close to yourself, closer than your enemies. Sorry, closer to yourself than your friends. So I've decided actually to take a subscription to The Economist, because it's like almost £6. It's $5.99. So I've taken the subscription to the magazine. I'll get the magazine, and I've got access online and on the app, an app as well to The Economist, and it's going to cost me £3.40 instead of £6. So I think it's worth it to look at what they're thinking. Our supposed enemies. And why do I say supposed? Well, because I think sometimes these people are not perfect. They might try to steer society in a certain direction, and it might not work. So they need to work with us. So am I selling out? Of course not. I'm going to stick to my principles of individual freedom, sound money. But I think it's good to talk a little bit about that. The Economist. So let's just see who's coming on. Oh, thank you, Susan Chappell, for the super chat donation. I appreciate that. John Callan is at Canary Wharf. Great. Bogus Fiat. I like that. Good morning, Bogus Fiat. Patty back. Marcia Teixeira says we have Nobium. I'm not sure what that means. Steve Evans from Port Angeles, Washington. Wow, that's interesting. Interesting name, Port Angeles. Max says many analysts make a big deal about banks going long silver 2 weeks ago, and they're back to short. What do they make of it? Well, they might be back to short the commercials. I've looked at the gold COT report, and the long commercials have increased. The silver long position was very small, so it's possible that they've gone short again, but it's very near 24-year highs and stuff in terms of being flat or long. Northwest Prepper from Washington State. That makes sense. Northwest Prepper, Washington. James Andrew, 62. If your enemies are narcissistic psychopaths, they will gaslight you, which makes it hard to judge reality. I agree. It's very difficult. It's a battle. I don't think, that's the other thing I was thinking today. I think the biggest battle for humanity, as we have evolved from, hunter-gatherers to societies, communities, is to have the right balance between law and order, individual freedom, and how strong government should be. And I think that's a question that is never ending, and we have to be ever vigilant. So yeah, we can never be complacent, and that's the most I can say. There's never going to be a perfect system. Hi, David Morsilli, another regular. Nice to see you, David. Yeah, Oliver, I'll be I'll be behind the globalist lines for you guys. I mean, one thing I noticed, for example, there's a lot of talk about how China is becoming very authoritarian, how China has hacked into Amazon, CIA. But I was looking here, the world this week in The Economist, right? And I'm starting to highlight some of the things I find interesting. And one of the little stories they have is, and I'll read, a court in northern China sentenced a former deputy chief of the country's securities regulator. So a deputy chief of the SEC, Chinese SEC, right? Yao Gang, to 18 years in prison for taking bribes valued at 69 million yuan or $10 million and insider trading. So why did I highlight this? Well, because it shows that China cracks down very, severely on corruption within the regulatory environment of markets. And that's not something that's been done, in the US, the UK, or Europe. There's been a lot of, just think of, the LIBOR scandal, think of HSBC. They were laundering money for, drug dealers in Mexico. They were just fined. Think of Danske Bank, who's been found to launder 200 billion euros through their Latvian, branch for Russian oligarchs. Will these bankers be put in jail for, 18 years like they do in China? No. So yes, China might be authoritarian. You might not have as many freedoms to express yourself, but at least they punish wrongdoers, which is something that we haven't been doing in the West. So that's interesting. Of course, the Economist only prints the little story. They haven't really commented on how the West doesn't do that kind of stuff, but I found it interesting. DW from Arizona. Hi, DW. Sanjit. Bangalore, India. Great. Nice to see you here, Sanjit. Nobio is called blue gold, 98%, Brazil, 2%. All right. Rare 1030. Anyone familiar with Harvey Dent? Yeah, Harvey Dent. Is it Harvey Dent? His name? Harry Dent. I'm not sure, but yeah, Mr. Dent. The thing is, he's been calling for gold to go to $400 or $700 an ounce for years. And he looks back at the Great Depression in the 30s when everything crashed and the dollar was really strong. But what he forgets to mention is that back in the 30s, early 30s, the dollar was gold. So he doesn't mention that. But nowadays, the dollar is not gold anymore. It's debt, paper debt. So, yeah. Is it? I think it's Harry Dent. I'm not sure. I forgot. But let's see. We've got Gur Olgi. Nice to see you, Gur Olgi. Another regular. Yeah, they do have the death penalty for many crimes. Ignizer trading. Will you short the market? No, I'm not. I think the thing about shorting the market these days is that I think the next crisis is going to be a big crisis, and the people who provide the market with instruments that allow you to short the market, they will be in danger. So counterparty risk will be something to consider. So you could short the market. Dow at 26,000, it drops to like 15,000 in 2 months. Everything, it's a huge crisis. But the broker or bank through which you shorted the market might not be in business. And even though you made the right bet, you're not going to be able to, benefit from it. So what I do personally, yeah, maybe do put a little bet on. But very small, in relationship to how much you have. I'm focusing still on being outside the system, and that means owning a little bit of gold, silver, and some cryptocurrencies as well. So that's my answer to that. Yeah, it's Harry Dent. Richard says Harry Dent has a dent in his head. That's a good one. Let me see. Gur Olgi says, if the good guys have control now, why doesn't the bad guys come crash the economy? They still have the power to do that. Well, maybe they are, interest rates going up. That's maybe the bad guys drain, saying we're not going to lend it to you anymore. But I'm not too sure about Trump. I read an article today or a headline saying that Trump is now putting missiles in the Ukraine, trying to provoke the Russians. Months ago, Trump used to say that siding with Ukraine against the Russians was a mistake. So he's changing a lot of his the stance. He hired John Bolton, who was a neocon from the Bush administration. He and I'm not going to get into Brett Kavanaugh's, all the brouhaha that's been going on surrounding his past. I'm just going to say that he was in the Bush administration as well. So I'm not too sure about Trump anymore. I'm not too sure if in the beginning he was, really going to change things. Is he being, blackmailed now, and is he, bending to the globalists? Maybe. I don't know. I hope not. Mario, have you read a book, The Men Who Knew? No, I haven't read that book by Alan Greenspan. I'll have a look at it. The problem with me, I'm the kind of person who buys books, starts reading them, and buys another book, and then starts reading that. I eventually finish them all off. My wife gets pretty annoyed about that, and that's why I've got so many books. But eventually I do finish them. Susan Chappell, when the dollar was backed by gold, uh, where was the gold cap and who was responsible for counting the gold? Well, before 1933, the gold was kept by people, by you or me, or if you had too much of it, which is a good thing, you put it in the bank. It was not kept by the government. The government had its own gold, but it's just like anything else. Where do you keep food in your house? It's the same thing. It was just kept all over the system. After 1933, though, when FDR banned gold ownership, the Federal Reserve collected all the gold for the Treasury. So they stole it from everyone. And then they put it in Fort Knox. And that's where it's been ever since. All the gold that the government and the Fed stole from the American people, it went to Fort Knox. I think Fort Knox was founded in 1937, so a few years after 1933. So they took all the, right here I've got, this is a $5 Liberty gold coin with an Indian head, 1911. So, if you handed in that coin to the Federal Reserve Bank at your district, let's say you lived in New York, you went to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and said, oh, here's my $10 gold coin, and they give you a Federal Reserve note. And then they melted all these coins into bars, and that's what's supposed to be at Fort Knox. So I hope that answers your question. Yankee Gluck or Gluck. Gluck means luck in German, but I guess as an American you'd say Gluck. Will Kavanaugh evoke Article 1, Section 10? I'm not sure what that Article 1, Section 10 is. You have to tell me. I haven't been to. I know that Lindsey Graham asked him asked him a lot about military courts and stuff like that. People are speculating on that a lot, but you have to tell me what that is. Chris Collier, they'll crash the market just before the midterm. Uh, maybe, but I think the all the propaganda and the statistics are probably helping Trump right now. Maybe they could do that, but I think the next correction is not going to be like all at once. It's going to take a year or two to evolve. So what about Brazil? I've got family in Brazil, of course. I've got I've got a cousin in Brazil who's involved with a small political party. They've only been around for a few years, and it's called Novo Party, which means the new party. And I actually called him this morning on Skype, and I didn't realize Brazil at the moment is 4 hours behind, and I woke him up. He was in bed, and we're gonna have a chat tomorrow on Skype, and he's gonna talk about Brazil and the election in Brazil and what's going on. And he speaks very good English. My cousin, I think that would be interesting for the viewers. But what's going on? Well, I think there's a candidate called Bolsonaro. He's considered to be the Trump of the tropics. I mean, I was reading The Economist. Well, I've got an app now from The Economist. So I was reading a couple of weeks ago. They wrote up the cover was about Bolsonaro, and they said, "Oh, he's a bad choice," and they think he could be very authoritarian. And they say he's not the right choice for Brazil, but they don't say who is the right choice for Brazil. But I think that will be interesting to have a chat with my cousin, and so people can understand that Brazil is a huge country. There's a lot going on in Brazil. It's in the top 10 as far as GDP is concerned. I personally think it's going to take a very long time for Brazil to improve. It all depends on the public, of course. But this Novo Party looks interesting. I was looking at the head of this party. He's very pro small government, but we'll have to see anyway. I think that's will be an interesting interview with my cousin, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. Richard McCorkindale, 1988. Hi, sorry, AIM watching. Hi, AIM, nice to see you. Yeah, 1988 cover suggests October 10th. Yeah, some people have speculated whether it's 15th of August this year, so that's going past. And there's a number 10 as well there, isn't there, on that coin? So yeah, that's coming up on Wednesday. We'll have to see. Some people are arguing that it could be the 11th of November, 11/11/2008, 100th anniversary of the end of the First World War, and 2018 also adds up to 11. Who knows? Rare says, looking forward to the interview. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be interesting for people to know a bit more about Brazil. And my cousin and I, we were born in the same city called Niterói, which is across the bay from Rio. And he even lived in London here about 15, 20 years ago, my cousin. And but now he's moved to the south of Brazil, a place called Santa Catarina, which is completely different from Rio. So it would be interesting because I've never been where he lives, but it will be interesting to ask him the comparisons between the south of Brazil and Rio. Uncle Deadly, any more news on Glint? Well, as far as the U.S. is concerned, it's going to be, they're going to be up and running for business in the U.S. In November. That's all I can say. And I'll be, cooperating with Glint. I'll be providing like a referral link where if you sign up for a Glint card in the U.S. With my link, you're not going to get a discount because you don't have to pay to get an account. But what you will get is like a small credit in your account when you sign up with them. I'm not sure how much it's going to be. In the UK, I will also, provide that from November. And the reason I'm not doing the UK is because I'm going to roll it out when the US comes out. But in the UK, viewers that sign up to Glint through my referral will get a £5 credit. I know it's not that much, but it's better than nothing. I'm not sure how much is going to be in the US. Pablo, I think the new world currency is going to be the oldest currency in the world, and that's gold. It might not be the currency itself that we hold and exchange, but it will be the base. It will be what the system is backed by. We might not be, exchanging gold coins, but it could be backed by gold. We might have to go back to gold because I think it was Lynette Zhang. I haven't watched the video, but her latest video says that 100% of the time in the past, when currencies collapse, the next system involves gold. So that's what I think. So I covered Glint, new currency. Uh, Gesso, do not go XRP or Ripple. Banker's coin is highly undesirable. Yeah, I agree with that, but I wouldn't, for example, blame people for maybe trying to benefit, trade it. So you can't, yeah, because for example, we're still using the banker system, so you might as well take advantage of it, but know that it is a banker's coin. Yeah, Jim Rogers, he thinks the dollar will keep rising. Uh, yeah, I mean, he could be right, but he's not always right, Jim Rogers. One thing that could hurt the dollar is the fact that interest rates in the US are rising very quickly. And foreign investors might not like that, because when interest rates rise very quickly, the foreign investors who hold US bonds, they're losing a lot of capital because the bond prices are going up. So if we continue to see a spike in interest rates, how like we've seen in the last week or two, it might hurt the dollar as well. So I'm not too sure. Things are never certain. Just because Jim Rogers or I I say something, it doesn't mean it will happen. But the thing to know is the probabilities and the trend, I would say. Andreas Dati, what do you think is driving up U.S. rates of U.S. interest rates, bond rates? Is it that the U.S. ain't able to sell their debt, or is it something else? Well, I think it could be. I think earlier this year, the reason rates went up in the U.S. is that the Russians were getting rid of almost all their treasuries. I think it was about 150 to 200 billion. The other reason is that the Fed is raising interest rates. The other reason is that the Fed is starting, they've been selling a lot of their bonds through quantitative tightening they have in their balance sheet. I think they've sold about 285 billion. And there's speculation the Chinese are like selling their bonds just to show the U.S. that they have a weapon as well. Because the Trump administration is being really aggressive against China. So what happens when people sell bonds and there's not as much demand? Well, the yields rise. So that's why. And the other very important point as well that you might is that the fact that the U.S. government is spending way beyond its means. The budget deficit right now is 5% of GDP. It's probably going to be almost like 6 or 7 in this fixed fiscal year. So yeah, the more debt they issue, which is bonds, the higher yields will go. Uh, KL Ryder, would you own a power sailboat like a 26-foot McGregor? Well, interesting you should ask, because my dad was a sailor. He used to have a bigger sailboat than it was a 40-foot C&C. It was a Canadian sailboat. It did have an engine. My dad was more of a sailor, but why not own a sailboat? Sailboat gives you freedom to go anywhere in the world. You just have, yeah. I think it's great to have a sailboat. I used to sail. I don't anymore, but yeah. Chris Collar, there's a rumor that the gold in Fort Knox was really from Russia. So, uh, maybe part of it, but what you have to understand is Russian Revolution was in 1917. America still used gold as money. Yeah, there's a lot of talk. I've read that the Tsar had hundreds of millions of in gold or dollars in London, in Paris, in New York, Chicago, and so when the royal family, when they were all killed, there were no heirs. So no one, so all these banks kept their gold. So yeah, a lot of the Russian gold probably went into circulation. So indirectly, yes, some of that gold could be Russian gold. No, because gold was money, so gold circulates. Yeah. So a lot of the gold in Fort Knox could also be Nazi gold or Chinese gold. Yes, Susan, people are asleep. Peter, it's not the Fed that's running a deficit. I think it's the Treasury. Maybe the Fed is, but I didn't see that. All eyes on me. Precious metals or cryptocurrencies. Well, if I had to choose between one or the other, uh, I guess for preserving wealth and savings would be precious metals. But if for speculation, it would be cryptos. Why that? Well, because cryptos can move a lot quicker than precious metals at the moment. That's not saying that precious metals couldn't move, like cryptos. Chris Bell, with UK interest rates so low, it's not worth leaving any money in the bank. You're right. That's right. You're keeping money in the bank with inflation running at 4, 5, or even 6%. You're actually losing. You might as well buy canned beans or food and put it in the cupboard, and they'll be worth more than will be you have something of more value in a year's time than pound notes. Yeah, I haven't FIFA nerd. I haven't really looked at the silver card again. Yeah, apparently it's a little short again, uh, but it was very near zero, so it does. It can move a little bit. We'll have to see what happens next week. Hi, high voltage. Nice to see you. Yes, Kathleen Smith. Euro dollars. They're basically, during the Bretton Woods system, the dollars that were created, printed out of thin air by the U.S. government to finance the Vietnam War. A lot of it flowed into Europe. So that's the dollar that stayed. It's basically the dollar market for Europe and the rest of the world. And it's traded, it's still traded in London, the euro dollar. It's not nothing to do with the euro currency. And that started in the 60s. And that's why LIBOR is basically the London interbank offered rate for the euro dollar market in the world. And yeah, it's the excess dollars, and the euro dollar market has grown bigger and bigger with the trade deficit becoming bigger and bigger because all these dollars have not flowed back into the United States. That's how they've been able to keep inflation low, and that's why the euro dollar market has grown as well. The higher the budget deficit, the bigger the euro dollar market has become. And that's why London is such a big financial center. especially in foreign exchange. Hebrew, Israel, Israelites, Benjamite. I want all Americans to know there's a Chinatown in every major US city. Well, there's a Chinatown in London as well. Hebrew, Israelites. Um, Ferg and Finan, do you think the next crash will be so bad that the whole stock market won't recover for a long time, like in Japan? Probably. Probably. It will depend. Yeah, I would say so. High voltage. In the end of the Wizard of Oz, the banker flies off in his balloon, laughing. How does that bold for you, Mara? Papa Bush and Boy George had spent all the gold in Fort Knox. I think it's not only Papa Bush and uh, or Shrub, as they call him, Shrubby. Also, the Clintons were involved in that. Mining stocks. I haven't been following them too much. I mean, I have some in like a pension that I have, and they haven't been doing too well. They're a bit, once the precious metals start really moving higher, gold and silver. Yeah, they're a leverage play on gold and silver, but you need to do your homework and find. There's different mining stocks. There is the mature big companies that have the gold and they mine it out. There's the exploration companies, so you need to do your homework. To all U.S. dollar bank to bank transfer ultimately get reported back to the Fed. Yes, yeah, any especially offshore or any international transfer of money into the US goes through the New York Fed. So that's why that missing 21 trillion, I could, I'm sure Catherine Austin Fitts knows this. The best way to find where that money is to audit the Fed, because every, all the banking, all the dollars that go through the banking system go through the Federal Reserve. And I would venture to say that a lot of those 21 trillions have gone offshore. So where do you go for that? The New York Fed. But I've never heard Catherine Austin Fitts say that. Why not? Come on, Catherine, wake up. Uh, Leonardo, I think the reset will be after a crash. Because why do you need a reset before a crash? You usually reset things after the accident. So that's what I think will happen. How much money did America make out of Britain after war? A lot of money. I recommend uh, Brigadier General Smedley Butler's book called the War is a Racket, and he talks about how the big and more American corporations' profits ballooned during World War One, and I'm sure they did the same during World War Two, and that's why America had 2/3 of the world's gold after World War Two. So of course America benefited from it. High Lakes 59. But yeah, Hebrew Israelite says Chinese as enemy is not a good thing. And I'm not even sure if they're enemies. I think, people think of, when they think of China, they think of communism. But actually, when I think of China and the Chinese, I think of the biggest capitalists in the world. They're really capitalist minded, very business minded. I mean, we have loads of Chinese in Brazil as well. They're in business. You have Chinese in Singapore, everywhere in the world. And what are they doing in these countries? Business. That's their business, the Chinese. Uh, so I'm not too sure whether they're an enemy. FIFA nerd, gold silver ratio, 1 to 100. I don't think so. I think the gold silver ratio is topped. It's now, I'm not sure exactly, it's around 81, 82, but it's been as high as almost 85. And I think the charts are looking like it's going down. Andreas would like to ask you about which country in Europe do you think has the most exposure to emerging markets? It looks like Italy's yield near inversion regarding longer term. Emerging markets, I would say Spain, actually. Why Spain? Well, because they've got a lot of connection to like Latin American countries, Venezuela, Argentina, because of their colonial past. So I'd say Spain could be one of those countries. Andy Dion, what are your thoughts on the new USDC, United States dollar coin, Goldman Sachs backed? I haven't heard about those. Sorry. Goldman Sachs backed coin. I haven't heard that. Yeah, Peter, the world wars, I don't think they were accidents as well. Google Norman Dodd interview with what's his name? G. Edward Griffin, Norman Dodd, DODD, and he talks about how there were the charitable tax-free foundations in the U.S. In 1908, the Carnegie Foundation. They were talking about how war would be the perfect instrument to change the way society thought. So yeah, I agree with you. Wars are used to make people in general do things they would normally not do in peacetime. And why? Well, because war is an extreme event, and people usually become scared, and they, during wartime, and they accept anything that the government tells them to do. Like in the UK during the Napoleonic Wars, or after the Napoleonic Wars, they said, well, we're going to institute the income tax. It's going to be temporary to pay for the Napoleonic Wars. And over 200 years later, we still have the income tax. But if they instituted the income tax 200 years ago in the UK in peacetime, they could never do it. So I agree with you. Wars are used to uh, make people do things that average, reasonable people wouldn't. And that's why I tell people not to get involved into this divide and conquer. China is our enemy, or whoever, Russia. I think it's all like rubbish. I think it's all rubbish. They're trying to scare us, and we shouldn't fall into this trap. Really, a lot of people will disagree with me, but I'll stand my ground on it. Esso, Standard Oil helped Hitler scientists. Yeah, that's right. Key VJ says, and you only need to read Anthony Sutton's book to find that out. He did a lot of research on that. Susan Chapel, Napoleon was quoted as saying about China, let her sleep, for when she wakes up, she will shake the world. Well, maybe he was right. I don't think Dow Gold is going to go to 45 again, personally. I think we're around 22 right now. I think this is just a correction in a, bear market. Yeah, David Morsilli, I agree with you. That's a good quote there. Wars are the best way to change existing paradigms. I couldn't have put it better. That's what I was trying to say, actually. High voltage. You're right, Mario. All the central bankers are Skull and Bones members, Goldman Sachs lackeys. Yeah, and I would also add all these secret societies like the Knights of Malta, the Knights of Cincinnati. My wife was listening to Richie Allen on YouTube, and apparently Brett Kavanaugh is a Knights of Malta guy, and so is Donald Trump. So was George Bush Jr. You know, these guys. It's all these secret societies, and maybe that's why JFK was taken down, because he made that speech against secrecy, and these people didn't like it. Maybe, you know, JFK realized that you know, it's all these secret societies that are governing us. Yeah, Billy, he snores a lot. Sounds like a cat. Leonardo Ibarra. Some people said silver is going to be a winner after crash. They said $1,000, even more. I wouldn't worry about the fiat price. You know, that is a huge move. It's not an impossibility, but if silver went to 1,000, that would mean the you know, the Federal Reserve note has been completely destroyed, because silver is money. Wade Wheelington II, since Iran has ditched the dollar, do you see the Iranian rial pegged to the yuan? Not sure if they're going to peg it to the yuan, but they're going to do a lot more business together. They're going to accept each other's currency. I think even China will accept the rial, and and vice versa. They might even use some gold. Yeah, Hebrew Israelite says, sad part is people know all this information on these wicked people, and we sit and text about it. I don't think everyone knows about it, but it's very hard because it's difficult. I mean, it all, you know, we play the game as well. And I'm not saying you and I, but generally speaking, you know, people don't realize it, but a lot of the things we do plays right into their, you know, their scheme. So, what about the books? One book I like a lot is The Law by Frederick Bastiat, a classic blueprint for a just society. And do I think societies are going to be perfect? No, there is no utopia, in my opinion. But this book is really interesting. It was written in 1850. So what does it say about the book here? Well, Walter Williams says the law created order in my thinking about liberty and just human conduct. And one of the interesting quotes by Bastiat uh, is that he said that the state is the fiction by which everyone thinks they should live at the expense of everyone else. So this is his like underlying, you know, assumption, Bastiat. Uh, the bastard king. We need to get rid of these whitewash sepulchers. Wow, I've never heard of that. Sepulchers. Check that. What does that mean, bastard king? So so this is what they say here about Bastiat. Statesman, essayist, and economist Frederick Bastiat was a renowned champion of individual freedom and the law. First published in 1850 is Bastiat's most famous enduring work. The law has been acclaimed for more than a century as the classic moral defense of liberty and limited government. Here is a timeless message of immutable principle in the immortal words of one of history's most courageous thinkers and brilliant writers. So I'll look that up, Bastard King. So basically, the thing that I like about this book is that Frederick Bastiat says that the law originally, you know, didn't come from the state. The law came organically uh, from individuals and human interaction. You know, if you worked the field and you grew some crops, those crops were yours. And if someone tried to steal them from them, that was wrong. And that's what he's trying to say, that the law has been perverted, and it's been even perverted since 1850, of course, even more. And the state is using the law to basically what he calls legal plunder, to take things away from people, through legal plunder. The taxation through, and he calls it theft, but he uses the term legal plunder. And he argues that the law and the state should be there to basically to just protect the individual, his property, and his right to life, his or her right to life. And I think it's a really good book. I recommend it. Some of you might already heard me talk about it. It's only about 75 pages. It's a classic. Bastia, he's everything that the Keynesians are not. So it's good. Andreas Dati, where can you find information that Kavanaugh and Trump are members of the Knights of Malta? How could I make them? Well, just Google it. I think my wife said there was a lady being interviewed by Richie Allen, and she seemed to know about that. So the other book, well, the other book, I think these two books, if they were taught in the schools and universities all over the world would be a much better place. So the next one is, what has government done to our money? The case for 100% gold dollar. Well, that would end fractional reserve, and that would end the financialization of the economy. Hi, see you, David. Nice to see you here. You're welcome. So Murray Rothbard, American, but from the Austrian School of Economics. I recommend this book. What he does here is he uses the regression theory analysis. And what's the regression theory analysis? Well, it's a way of analyzing a concept or something by going back to how it was created. You go back to the beginning. So he just looks at how money evolved. First, we had barter, and then people found that there were commodities that were the most marketable commodities. They became money, and that's how it happened through the market. But then government hijacked money, and that's what he talks about. He explains what money is. I mean, I remember in high school in Brazil, I went to the American school in Rio, and one of the classes was economics, and the teacher, someone asked, what is money? And she actually said, oh, we don't really know what money is. So that's how it's taught. But if she'd given me that book back then, I would have known, but they don't. So that's why I really recommend this book. I'll put the link to these two books after the live stream has been recorded in the description of the video, if you guys want to, if you're interested. I'm sure you can also find free PDFs for these books, but if you want to buy it, of course. Kathleen Smith, what about the fact that people in the West don't hold gold? Yeah, well, that just goes to show they've been, brainwashed. The thing is, the not only brainwashed, is just that luckily, in Europe, especially North America, we haven't had and even the UK to some extent, we haven't really had the problems of collapsing currencies. So people, maybe like in Germany or France, they hold a bit more gold. But in other parts of the world, they've had so many different currencies that they've stuck to gold. Leonardo, how long before bonds fall apart? Well, it seems to be in the process. I think the next few weeks will be really important to see if this is for real. Kathleen Smith, barter story is a myth people use tabs to trade, never did barter. Yeah, well, the Sumerians used tablets. I agree, but they were not the only ones that were trading. So I would say that less maybe evolved societies did barter. People did barter after World War II in Germany when their currency had collapsed. They used cigarettes. So I don't completely agree with that. I think barter came before tabs. Um, so I think you just have to, yeah, that's the way I look at it. YK, do you think we go back to QE? A lot of people have been. I watched a video. Greg Hunter, he interviewed John Williams this weekend, and he seems to think that once the stock market starts going down a lot and the economy goes into recession, they'll start QE again, and that's what everyone expects. And they might, but my gut feeling is that they won't, because uh, if they do, it's not going to make any difference, because the presumption they had when they started QE 10 years ago was that they would never have to use it again. It was just to get the economy out of the hole. But if they use QE again, it's going to be a signal to investors, especially very big investors, that the system is completely broken. So I think they just won't bother with it. So I don't think they will use QE again, and everything is going to just implode. That's my view. Yeah, Sanjay. Yeah, the Indian and Chinese economy, they were top dogs before 1800. Yeah, that's right, Chris. It will collapse. The QE4 will not help. Next step in the trade war, it's the kinetic war. Hebrew Israelite. Uh, That's where it always leads. It leads to like that kind of war, unfortunately. Hopefully it won't. 20% yield. Well, a 20% yield will destroy the economy, because there's so much debt, and the economy won't be able to sustain. Already, I saw that the U.S. government's paid almost 500 billion in interest. So, can you imagine how much they'd be paying in interest if yields went up to 20%? The whole, thing would collapse. Kathleen Smith, nice to see you. Take care. Talk to you later. Hebrew, is the UK gonna Brexit? Uh, yeah, I mean, I think they might, but it's not gonna be as the people who voted to exit expected. I think they've tried to like fudge it, so it's not gonna really be. It will only be a Brexit in name, not in practice, in my opinion. Wade Willington, what's your introspection on a gold-backed crypto coin? I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, don't have a problem with it. The thing about gold is that um, you have to store it somewhere. So, and premise behind cryptos is that it's going to be decentralized. And am I saying that centralized system is bad? Not really. I think the world had centralized systems. You just have to have trust. But no, I wouldn't have a problem with a gold-backed crypto. I mean, we have Glint, which is a UK based, EU based, debit card right now, where you can have your money in gold, and they store it in a vault in Switzerland. And every time you spend in your debit card, it takes away the gold, or you can have euros as well. So Glint is a way to have digital gold, and I've met with them. I'll be working with them from November, and they're coming to the States as well. Glint, GLINT, Glint Pay. So I think that's have a look at that. Pablo, can you explain zombie banks? Well, it just a zombie is like a dead person walking, isn't it? That's all it means. That these banks, the only reason they're still around is that they've been kept on life support system. Zombie bank. They're not really healthy. Uh, Baudale, what yield do you think we need to get to for this to become irreversible? GS. Do you mean like the bond market? I think we're already there. I talked in my video yesterday the fact that the trend from 1981 of lower yields, lower highs and lower lows, has been broken because we've broken the high of 2000, I think 13, and that was a significant high, just above 303. So I think it's irreversible. Lord Humongous is here. Hi, Lord Humongous. Nice to see you. Uh, I have been on a while, Lord Humongous, about an hour, but I'll stay on a little longer as you're here. Lord Humongous says I want to get a Glint card. It will be available. I don't know the exact date, but in November in the US. Brian Callahan, you're very informative, even though you play golf. Golf puts me to sleep. Well, every person has his own hobby or like interest. Mine is golf. It doesn't put me to sleep. I think but I respect your view. Bogus fiat. How is Glint different from gold money? Well, one of the differences is that with gold money, if you have your money in gold, if you want to spend it on your card, you have to, how can I say, redeem that gold into the currency you want to spend, and then spend it. With Glint, you can spend directly your gold, so you don't have to like do the change. So you could go anywhere in the world, and you don't. Let's say you go from the UK to Thailand. Uh, you know, if you have gold money, you're going to have to change it into pounds, and then they change it from pounds to Thai baht. But if you go to Thailand with your Glint card and it's in gold and you spend it, they'll just change it from gold to Thai baht. So that's the difference. Uh, but it might not be. You might not consider that too different. But you know, what's the difference between NatWest and Barclays? Well, they're both banks, so it's competition. Uh, Licks 59. Does Glint revalue your balance every day according to the London Fix? No, it just your balance is revalued you know, constantly by the spot price. So it's not just once a day. I guess it stops during the weekend, but it's a spot price. If you're going to buy gold with them, it's spot price plus 0.5%, and vice versa. Yeah, Shrek. Yeah, the bond yield did bottom in July of 2016 at 132, the 10-year yield. And I even made a few videos back 2 years ago, saying that it looked like we'd bottomed, and we have, because it's gone from 132 to now we're at 323. I like baseball as well, Lord Humongous. We don't play baseball here in the UK. They play cricket. But when I went to school in Brazil, the American school in Rio, I played what they call their pony league. So I do like baseball. I saw that the Colorado Rockies beat, who was it? The Milwaukee Brewers the other day, you told me. When I was in the States university, the Colorado Rockies didn't exist. So that's a new team for me. John Callahan, Labor Party, if they come to power, considering a 4-day week, am I concerned? I'm concerned about all governments. I guess Labor would be worse, probably. I don't know. It's none of them have. It was Labor that bailed out the banks. It's been conservatives that have kept bailing out the banks. Um, so they always wreck things. Baudel, can the Fed manipulate bond prices? The problem with the Fed right now is that they're actually selling all their bonds. So, uh, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. If they say, "Oh, we're going to stop selling and start buying now to keep interest rates low," they lose all credibility. And the economy is supposed to be doing really well right now. So, yeah, Gordon Brown and the British gold. Well, the rumor has it that Gordon Brown was helping the bullion banks who were very short gold, and they couldn't get out of their shorts. So he pre-announced the sale, which drove the price down, and then they were able to cover and probably even make money. Jazz Atwall, do you recommend a place in London to store gold? Yes, Jazz. I think you asked me that question in a comment in one of the videos. Goldinvestments.co.uk. They're based in the city of London, and I recommend them. They store gold. I think they charge £4 an ounce per year. Goldinvestments.co.uk. And if you talk to them, tell them that I referred you to them. So I recommend it. The other story about gold in the city of London, and they are in the city of London. There's a story about this guy here, Franz Pick, the Triumph of Gold, and he was around an economist and investor back in the early 1900s. And he said that he kept 2,000 sovereigns in a bank in the city of London during World War II. And after World War II, those 2,000 sovereigns were still there. So historically, it's a safe place. Hori Fumoyo. You like Glint, but I remember you saying you didn't because you didn't want to sell your gold. Why the change? Well, I've had a Glint card for months since they came out. I think what I said is I prefer having physical gold. I've got my gold coins, but you know, What Glint does, it does allow you to spend the gold, and I don't want to spend my gold, but I think there might come a day where gold might come back again as money, and I think Glint is one of those things. And I think they're very serious. About a month ago, I was contacted by Glint. I went to their offices. I was there for 2 hours. I talked to them, and I think they're for no, I don't think they're for real. They are for real, and they have the same ideas that I have of sound money. That the fiat money is coming, is not sustainable. So eventually, I have some gold with Glint, not that much, and I'm not spending it. But I think eventually it might be the only thing that we can spend if the system does implode. And you might ask, oh, Glint is in the banking system. Well, it's not. The gold is held outside the banking system in your name, unless MasterCard goes off the system. You still be able to use it. And they're going to allow for delivery as well, which is something that, they didn't in the beginning. So I hope that answers your question, Hori. Number one, will rates go past 5%? Do you mean the 10-year yield or the Fed funds? Well, historically, the 10-year yield always traded above 5%. Traded between 6, 8% in the early, mid, late 90s. Even in the 2000s, it was up at 6%. So yeah, it could very easily go back above 6%. In the gold, paddle cleaner in the new gold standard, can the country which has no gold take from the people their gold? Well, the thing is, people always say that, oh, we don't want a gold standard because we have no gold. But look at Switzerland. Switzerland has no mineral gold on the ground, but they have a lot of gold. So all a country needs to do is trade with other countries, and they'll get paid in gold. That's how you accumulate gold. It's just money. Yeah, Fed funds possibly as well could get up to 5, but I don't think they're trying to get it back up to around 3. Just there, if their measure of inflation keeps going higher, it will. We might have to go higher. Ryder says, finally debt free, looking to buy my first gold. Any recommendations? Just do your homework. I don't know how much you have. Don't buy if you have $1,000 or a little more. Don't buy bars. Buy half ounce coins or a tenth of an ounce, quarter Krugerrands, or sovereigns are nice as well. Mary, do you like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Yeah, no, I don't really know much about. I know it's big in Brazil, but not something I follow. Wade, is that the Shanghai Cooperation SCO organization? Yeah, I guess that's the the One Belt, One Road version of NATO. All right, guys, I'm gonna take a couple more questions and then I'll call it a day for now. I've been here for an hour and 15 minutes. So I'll just wait for a couple of more questions from you, and then I'll call it a day. Do you see Bank of Scotland bills? No, not too many here in London. Some very rarely. Yes, Wade, I do think other countries will move to the SCO. Sanjit, what's your opinion on multipolar world order? Oh, I think it's better than having a unipolar, definitely. So before I finish, I'd like to thank everyone who participated in the live stream. Uh, And I'd like to thank all the loyal subscribers, the new subscribers for, you know, donating to the channel, for going to the Monaco 64 store, for all your, super chat contributions. I really appreciate it. I really want to, keep this channel growing and devote more time to it, and it really helps. So yes, go Rockies, Lord Humongous. so. Yeah, you're welcome, everyone, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great rest of the weekend.